Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the extraordinary Higganum Cove. This is a beautiful event and a beautiful day, and I thank everybody for coming out. From the mid-1980s, when the illegal dumping was first reported, to the Higganum Cove Committee's work in the late 1990s, and today, after extensive planning and organizing over the past few years, we finally have a clean, beautiful cove. An interesting fact, Haddam has the most number of miles along the Connecticut River of any Connecticut river town, but we only have one piece of property, town-owned, on that river, and that's our transfer station. So this gives us another option to visit other than the transfer station on our days off. And all year round, it's beautiful, ever-changing environment, and I hope you'll all enjoy the cove as much as I have watching it become what it is today. I'd like to acknowledge our second selectman, Bob Duvall. If you could raise your hand. Thank you, Bob. And now I'd like to introduce a champion for the environment and our own representative, Phil Miller.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. It's so nice to be with all of you here today as we celebrate this great accomplishment. We've come to a consensus, I think, over the last generation or more that throughout our state, it's all to our best interest to reuse some polluted, tainted industrial sites, to clean them up and readapt them and reuse them. They often have great infrastructure. Well, this one's slightly different because this was built here in, about 300 years ago, first off, to harness the great water power from those three creeks that come down through the cold water hills and gain here. And of course, this place was tainted. And now it's more appropriate to return this not to an industrial site, but to a natural ecological site. Some people say that we have struggles with regulation, that we're overregulated, but yet all of us here have another commonly held consensus that we want a Connecticut River and a Long Island Sound that we can swim in and fish in and paddle in and sail in and boat around in. And to have that, we have to make sure that we have business and industry that's competitive, but also keeps our environment the way we want it, where we have good clean air and water standards. That our Department of Energy and Environmental Protection could join the Environmental Protection Agency in finishing this project and coming up with it and doing it is a great accomplishment. And I'd like to especially thank and laud the first select woman of Haddam, Melissa Schlag, who's been a great liaison for the town here to follow through to make sure this happens and to have the town be a strong partner in this. And this is a great accomplishment. And it's great to have people here from these agencies who made this happen. This is a real success, and hopefully you're going to all be able to have picnics down here and enjoy this. And so thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Melissa, and enjoy your time.
Thanks, Pat. Now, someone who's been fighting for the 2nd District and is helping us solve our own local issues, such as the Tylerville water pollution. I've actually had many conversations with Congressman Joe Courtney about our Tylerville water situation, so he can at least maybe talk about all the great things Haddam is.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, one of the reasons why Haddam is so great is because you were smart enough to elect Melissa Schlag as your first select woman, because she's, and today is another example of her great leadership. And thank you for the invitation to be here today. As Phil said, anytime you can see a property that really has been sort of restored in a way that accomplishes its highest and best use, it really is something to really be applauded and to put the spotlight on. Phil also used the term consensus twice. I counted that actually during your speech, because coming from the U.S. House of Representatives, the word consensus is like a drink of water in the desert. And it is true. It is true that there is consensus in Connecticut, and frankly all across New England, that a lot of these former industrial sites, that are part of our proud heritage in terms of where the Industrial Revolution started in this country, are now today very challenged sites, and that trying to sort of come up with strategies to, in some instances, redevelop them in terms of new economic entities, whether it's housing or commercial properties, or to restore them in a way that's open space, is really one of the great challenges for our region. And the Environmental Protection Agency, which is represented here today by Jim Murphy, has been an outstanding partner in Eastern Connecticut. I mean, I can start at one end of the district, whether it's the old Norwich State Hospital property, the Uniroyal site in Plainfield, Roosevelt Mills and Rockville section of Vernon, where I'm from. In 2 weeks, we're going to cut the ribbon on a new mixed use for that amazing historic building that's there. You go up to Summers, the Summers Mill that's now EPA's in the process of getting evaluated, where they had a fire a couple of years ago. None of those properties would be able to move because of the fact that they either had long abandoned ownership, chain of title, or that the private market just simply was not going to step up and make the investment in terms of evaluating the property and cleaning it up. That's where EPA's brownfield programs really hits the sweet spot for our region, because when they move and they come in and do this remediation, it unlocks the property and it allows private development, or allows public use in a way that would otherwise be just totally impossible. So again, I think it's just really important for us to step back for a second on an occasion like this today and understand that the mission of that agency is totally in sync with the future of our region and the country in particular, just because of the unique history of economic development over the years. And to all of the local committee folks who work together, because it has to be a partnership. EPA is not going to just kind of parachute in by itself. There has to be that organic grassroots development of people that who know the property, who understand it, and have the vision for what will be, in fact, the highest and best use. And you've done it here today. Just hit the bullseye, with this incredible progress that's here, and to all of you, kudos and congratulations. And let's use this as an example that will help, again, so many other towns and communities, not just in Eastern Connecticut, but all across our state, to unlock these properties and really create a better future for all of us. So thank you, Melissa, and great job.
Thanks, Joe. And as Joe said, this has been something that's been on the books, so to speak, for well over 2 decades. So it's definitely been a work in progress, and we have unlocked something beautiful here. And now, someone who used to fight for the consumer as our Attorney General, but who now fights for us as our United States Senator, the Honorable Richard Blumenthal.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you. Thank you. Still fighting for you. Environmentally, as well as in consumer protection. I think we all recognize, before man polluted this place, it was a natural wonder. And now it will be a natural wonder again, due to the activism and leadership of folks who are here and others who helped to move both state and federal agencies to recognize the vast potential of this site. I want to thank all who contributed, beginning with Melissa and the great leadership of your local officials, and most important, the activists, local activists. Like politics, a lot of environmentalism is local. And as much as we celebrate the triumphs of federal or state agencies, the folks who really deserve the credit are the neighbors and the residents of Higganum, who simply would not take no for an answer. My own involvement in this site goes back more than 2 decades. By a curious coincidence of fate, I fought one of the major polluters of this site, the Capizzello brothers, Russell and Gino, of great notoriety, because they were responsible for a pile of debris and contamination in Bridgeport, Connecticut, called Mount Trashmore. And we prosecuted them when I was Attorney General back in the early 1990s, and I became aware that they were polluters not only of Bridgeport, but of other sites in the state, Higganum being one of them. And so there's a curious coming around for me today to know that one of the vestiges of their misdeeds and contamination is being remedied and reclaimed. But of course, the contamination dates way back, much older than the Capozello brothers, to a time when this site was used to dye fabrics, to store chemicals, to make circuit boards and mimeograph paper. Think of it, circuit boards and mimeograph paper. There are more than a few in this crowd who probably don't even know what mimeograph paper is. And I'm not asking you to disclose your age. But reclaiming and rescuing this site is more than about convenience or luxury. It's really about what we owe as human beings to our environment, to nature, to what God has given us, what we owe in stewardship to generations to come. It's a very profound and important accomplishment because generations, Evan's age and younger now, will come here for the tranquility and beauty and serenity of this place in the midst of a very busy world, maybe sometimes in moments of challenge and crisis, to see something of really eternal beauty. I know all of this sounds big and abstract, but the point is that sometimes government does good things. Sometimes not, but we should always remember that there is an importance in the investment, and I think that's the key word here, investment, that we make in our natural resources, in our environment, to make sure that we leave them better than we found them. That's the essential duty of good environmental stewardship, to leave things better than we found them. That's what you are doing here. That's what, and I really mean you, the citizens of Haddam, have done here. And so I just want to say thank you for the work that BEEP has done, EPA, but most important, Haddam and its citizens and environmental activists. You've succeeded, and you've made things better. When you make things better, we're all better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You just reminded me actually of a funny story, and our Public Works Director, Phil Goff, couldn't be here today, but you alluded to chemicals storage and mimeograph paper. In the 1980s, Haddam had a flood here. Some of you might remember that. Supposedly, one of our trucks made its way in the water all the way down to Higganum Cove, and when Phil pulled it out, it had no paint left on it. So obviously there was some bad stuff that we're glad is gone. Now, one of our local historians who will probably give us a lot more information on Higganum Cove than I could ever dream of knowing, and she's also the director of the Haddam Historical Society, Lisa Malloy.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm not going to actually cover the environmental history of Higganum Cove. I think that's been pretty well documented today. But I am going to talk a little bit about the businesses and people that were impacted by this area. So, although the mill buildings, sluiceways, and water tower are gone, this beautifully restored site possesses the ghosts of our community's industrial past and the heritage of many of those who call Haddam and Higganum home. The water power of the Higganum River has been used for over 300 years. The earliest mill was a grist mill, which provided original settlers and their descendants a place to grind their wheat into flour and their corn into cornmeal. Other early mills included a fulling mill, which was a process of making cloth. During Higganum's heyday as a shipbuilding center, this river provided power to an oakum factory, which manufactured the caulking used in wooden ships. The 1859 map of Higganum shows the Higganum Manufacturing occupying a mill at this site. This firm went on to become one of our town's largest employers and manufactured agricultural implements, including harrows, cider presses, and hay spreaders, to name a few. Go team. The company, however, moved to the center of the village and sold this site to Russell Manufacturing. In 1860, Russell Manufacturing constructed a sizable mill to fabricate cotton webbing. This material was used for making suspenders, and by the 1890s, they were the largest producer of suspenders in the United States. I like to think that Higganum helped hold up the country for the last half of the 19th century. This mill was just one of the Russell plants, with a number of others being located in Middletown. They also fabricated items that contributed to the war effort during World War I, including canteen covers, first aid pouches, belts for infantry, cavalry, and officers, cartridge belts, rifle slings, and much, much more. Higganum again provided items for the greater good, but this time on a global scale. Russell was one of the village's major employers, including descendants of original founders, as well as early immigrants, including the Irish, Scottish, and Danish. In 1880, Rosa Bailey, age 12, worked full-time here in the cotton mill and boarded with a local family, a good distance from her own family in Portland. The entire Sorensen family from Denmark worked here, including 11-year-old daughter Sarah. The mill actually employed many young children and teenagers, and most of the employees were under the age of 20. Although Connecticut was at the forefront of child labor laws, it wasn't until the early 20th century that many states set a minimum of age 14 for manufacturing workers. In 1920, Frank Frizzell, a former superintendent of Russell Manufacturing, purchased the site and opened the Frizzell Fabric Company. They manufactured and dyed all types of textiles, including braided fabric. Frizzell became well known and wealthy after patenting a belt-like cartridge carrier for machine guns just prior to World War I. In 1946, Frizzell sold the site to the Frismar Company, which fabricated the well-documented mimeograph paper and I guess computer boards. A number of Higganum residents today recall working there and remember a time when goods were manufactured in town and you could buy all your necessities in the village. It was a time when people would walk to work, buy their groceries at Hager's or Rosniak's, and grab an ice cream at Ruth's. So this site holds memories for many different generations, whether it was your first job at Frismar's or a dare to climb the water tower in the 1970s. But let us not forget those who ground grain 300 years ago, or the 12-year-old who toiled in the mill in the 1870s. So I hope that future visitors will enjoy the natural beauty of the site, but respect its long industrial history. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I'll also speak now, since she mentioned it, about the foundations of the old mills. The EPA was very, very kind to us to preserve those. One of the ideas on the idea list was to remove all of the stones so they could flatten out that area. But they were very kind to just backfill it in and make it safe for everybody to walk through there and walk through time and remember the people who used to work there. So now I'd like to introduce this is someone who's been working on the Higganum Cove project since he started with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, but it was then Department of Environmental Protection. It's Supervising Environmental Analyst of Bureau of Water, Protection and Land Reuse. The more years you spend at DEP, the more titles you have in your name. Tom Riscassi. I don't know where to go.
Yeah, I was looking up the record of my history of working on this site, and I found the first paper I ever wrote, which was in 1989, 26 years ago, which is a very long time for a site to be going through an investigation and remediation. But this is not a typical site that I get to work on. But because I enjoyed it so much, and it's always been my favorite site, I wouldn't let it go. It's taken a long time to assemble the appropriate funds to get this project moving forward. I'm used to working on projects that are coming back to some kind of redevelopment for industry or housing or some other kind of commercial operation, and where there's a benefit that doesn't really take into consideration passive recreation and parks type of a setting. This site has always been remarkable to me, and we'd always understood that it wasn't going to be best suited to fulfill and restore into that capacity.
And it's great to see this now as a site where the people can actually come back here. I mentioned to Melissa earlier that this was the first time in that 26 years where I've come to the site without wearing personal protective equipment. And it feels pretty good to get out here and to understand now there's no more threats of any kind of environmental contamination that I might either be exposed to or bring off the site to and spread around. But it's been a long, strange trip to go through the process of getting access, issuing orders, going through getting funding, nominating it to the state Superfund program, which allowed us to get bond monies, but it never was a priority because of its not being a site that was being brought back into the tax rolls like many of the other sites I have to work on. So it's truly a great moment to have this site become available for all the people of Higganum and surrounding towns. Thank you.
Now we have EPA's Leader of Government and Community Relations in the Office of the Regional Administrator, Jim Murphy.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I bring greetings and congratulations from Kurt Spaulding, who was our regional administrator from EPA out of our New England office. Kurt couldn't be here today, so I get the pleasure of being here on a beautiful day. I think it would have been better than last weekend when this was originally planned. You know, when EPA, this is one of the bright spots for EPA is coming to these events, be it a brownfields event or one of these emergency removal projects where I get a chance to really thank a lot of the group's agencies as well as the local people who have worked with us. And just on this, Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection has been working on this for many years, as we just heard. EPA has really only been involved a little bit more recently, and we were able to bring necessary funding to the table thanks to Senator Blumenthal, Congressman Courtney, people who are fighting for us in Washington so that we're able to come out here and accomplish the type of thing that was accomplished here. We also worked on this with Connecticut Department of Transportation, Connecticut Historic Preservation Office, Connecticut Department of Public Health, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Interior, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and National Marine Fisheries Service. So that's a lot of acronyms. A lot of agencies put themselves together as a team to try to work on this and to work on it. I also wanted to recognize that the lead person from EPA was not able to be here today. Janice Sang, I think a lot of folks met her. She's our on-scene coordinator who was on this project from the beginning till the end. Alan Gerald was another on-scene coordinator who filled in with her. And I want to recognize Alan Humphreys, who's from EPA, standing in the back from our emergency response team out of New Jersey. They also spent a lot of time here at the site. We used a number of contractors, the restoration contractors, the cleanup contractors. Bill Kenny is here someplace today. Bill's firm from Fairfield helped us with the restoration. So, and I think that the biggest thanks goes really to the town, because when we go in to do work at a location, all over New England, we've done a lot in Connecticut, as Congressman Courtney mentioned. But to have a partner with the town that has a vision for the site, that can meet with us on a regular basis, that can help us deal with the local citizens who are disrupted. You know, the folks who are up on this road, having those large trucks go by there for many, many months into the years. You know, that we have town representatives who can work with us and explain to folks what's going on, let them know exactly what they're going to be seeing, how long it's going to take. It just makes a big difference for us. So just some quick numbers and then I'll be done. Is we spent almost close to $3.5 million on this site. And again, a lot of work went into it. As you can see, you know, some of our sites, when we come in, we just try to get rid of all the contamination and do a basic restoration. But again, because the town had a vision for this, we were able to work with local representatives and really, I think, building a beautiful place. And I think it's going to look great in another year or two. It really looks amazingly just vibrant after the the basic restoration work, and it takes a little while before it really sinks in, and you see a difference. The last of the numbers really is just what we. Probably don't need to go through how many trees, but 60 trees, thousands of bushes and plants were restored and were planted here, so people can enjoy them, and it just built just a great looking place. And again, I'm just happy to be here. I'll leave out the amount of tons of PCBs and everything else we dug out of here. It was a lot, and it wasn't cheap and it wasn't easy, but it's complete. And again, I want to thank everybody.
My papers.
I want to take a second turn here. I apologize, just to thank someone who hasn't been mentioned yet, Gina McCarthy. When she was commissioner and I worked with her on this site, she really cared about it, and I can't help but believe that when we went to her, her familiarity with you and with this site played a part in our ability to get the money that was necessary. And I want to thank her from the bottom of our hearts, because we're going to be going back to her for money for other sites, and we want to know how much we appreciate if you could convey that message to her, that she was thanked exuberantly and enthusiastically by the people of Connecticut for the receptiveness that she displayed. So thank you very much. I apologize for interrupting.
That's great, because we need her for Tylerville, so thank you. And last but not least, we have Steve Gephardt, who has spent his entire life in the area every summer and is now the supervising fisheries biologist for the DEEP Inland Fisheries Division. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Well, we've heard stories about history, industrial development, litigation, bureaucracies, the process, and now remediation. But there's one more story that I'd like to tell, one of natural resources. Long before Europeans colonized this area, even before the Native Americans arrived here, this spot has hosted rich and abundant fish and wildlife populations. The Connecticut River has been home to huge runs of migratory fishes, so large that early English settlers found them incredible because they dwarfed what they were familiar with back in England. Fish coming from the ocean included Atlantic salmon, American shad, sturgeon, alewives, blueback herring, striped bass, smelt, sea lampreys, sea-run trout, and eel. There were other species that lived in the river and came into this tributary to spawn also, or to eat the fish that were coming in here to spawn. These runs, an important source of food for humans, were one reason why southern New England had some of the densest Native American populations on the East Coast. So what brought these fish into Higganum Creek? Habitat. Each species needs a certain type of habitat to spawn and support the growth of their young. For some, it is the clean gravel beds that you find right behind you that's not found in the river, which is mostly mud. Each spring, tens of thousands of alewives, blueback herrings, sea-run trout, sea lamprey, and eels have entered this stream and piled up below those falls. The eels could wiggle over the falls, and still do, and can get upstream, but everything else stopped at the base of the falls. Both as a boy and later as a biologist, I have stood here, or snorkeled here, and witnessed this annual ritual that can be as inspiring as the Connecticut River swallow flight that is becoming so well known. I have been underwater to watch the stream clogged with swirling, spawning blueback herring coating my wetsuit with their sticky eggs. Meanwhile, sea lampreys were excavating nests in the gravel and spawning, while common shiners, fall fish, and eels gobbled up some of those eggs. Mixed in were perch and white suckers, spot-tailed shiners, and the occasional bass. During the day, I watched trout leaping at the base of the falls, and at night, large catfish from the river would move in to vacuum up eggs that weren't well protected. You know, when a circus comes to town, it attracts throngs, not just the paying customers, but the hangers-on, the opportunists. People charge for parking in their front lawns, tag sales pop up, craftsmen hawk their wares along the streets, con men and pickpockets work the crowds. So it is with these annual fish runs, although I'm not equating my fish with pickpockets. When Higganum Creek teems with fish, along come the ospreys, the great blue heron, the black-crowned night heron, otter, bobcats, raccoons, striped bass, owls, and even now eagles. There's a party going on and everyone wants to get in on it. Well, the numbers of fish are not as large as they were when I was a kid. Some of that has to do with the pollution that degraded this habitat in Higganum Cove, and some of it reflects on what's going on with these species out in the ocean. That's a story for another day. But these fish runs still occur, and with this remediation, we've taken a huge step toward rebuilding these runs by repairing the habitat. The chemicals that have been seeping out of the soil here typically do not kill the fish. But what they do is they interfere with the imprinting, homing mechanism that guide migratory fish back to their home stream. Even in small quantities, parts per million, the chemicals can repel the fish and send them off to another unpolluted tributary to spawn. This cleanup, along with the other actions the DEEP and its partners are taking now, will contribute to larger fish runs both in the river and in Higganum Creek. The unique features of this site argue that we should not stop with just the cleanup. This is one of the few places along the river where one can witness the migrations without going underwater. The clear, shallow water and the ability to stand well above the stream and look down offers a unique perspective. The beauty of the falls and the marshes attract people and provide a great opportunity not only to foster better fish and wildlife populations, but also to educate and inform the public about these stories that we've been telling today. I know the town of Haddam is interested in pursuing some of these ideas, and our department stands eager to work with the town as it develops its plans. So I'll close by adding my congratulations on a job well done to all of the people who have worked so many years to see that this has come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. As all of the speakers have mentioned, none of this would have been possible without the many entities that work to keep this going. Thanks to the original reporter of the illegal dumping, the first members of the Cove Committee, some who are here, Tim Brewer, Marge DeBold, Steve O'Brien, David Platt, and Peter Smith. I also want to give a special thanks to our town planner, Liz Glidden, who countless times walked down here with us with our yellow boots on, and all of her leadership on this. Thank you, Liz. I also want to thank the Public Works Department for all their assistance, the residents of Dublin Hill and the infamous truck route that was alluded to earlier, and our troopers for helping to monitor the site and keep people safe. I have to give a big thanks to someone who regretfully couldn't be here today, but spent so much time assisting Haddam over the past 2 years. Without the energy and organization of Janice Sang, our EPA on-scene coordinator, as Jim mentioned, we wouldn't have ended up with such a complete and beautiful project. Janice pushed for all the little amenities here, like saving the walls for us, religiously using the original plan from over 15 years ago to build the walkways, plant the grasses, 2,200 wetland plants, various shrubs and trees, and she was extremely sensitive to find ways to save the remains of our industrial heritage in the foundations of our old mill building. And I actually have copies of the original plan back from 2000 on the table back there. It's pretty remarkable what they've done and how it's similar to today. One day we hope to do more here, perhaps a fundraiser for a pavilion on this structure here. Maybe cover over the, if you guys have a moment, please check out the parts of the mill is still there, the turbine in the behind that silver fence, and we hope to one day cover that over and use that to view the falls a little better. We maybe will have a kayak launch here. We have some clearing to do, but the site is just at its beginning stages. So with thanks to the many men and women who've worked on this site, I hope you all enjoy the beautiful day and meet new friends and old. Now, if all the speakers can join me in the ribbon cutting ceremony to officially classify this site as having a clean bill of health, and we have our symbolic caution tape here that we can cut. Bad pun. And thanks to all of you too for coming out. This is great. We couldn't have done it without the community as well. I have mini CDs.
You should do the honors.
Yeah, you get the medal.